We really need to stop falling for the rage bait, and that's you and myself included, but seriously, we do need to stop falling for this constant anger. A lot of people are getting really upset when they view something in the news or on media sources, and it really leads to nothing good, especially because most of it is intentionally supposed to strike a nerve with you, get you upset, and everything feels like the end of the world. And the first problem with this is the algorithms. A lot of them you have to understand, hard to understand when you're looking at it, because you have an emotional attachment to something horrific happens, let's say a murder that takes place in a state and it's controversial. For example, it happens a few times a year, it feels like. You know, the algorithm basically finds people that are talking about it, shares opinions with you, makes you enraged about something that happened, and you just get more and more basically backed into your zone where you're locking in on one issue or one thing and get more and more upset, and it's all meant to be kind of, again, get you angry. It's a lot of rage bait, even if it's that single post isn't intentionally feeling like it's meant to strike a nerve. It's just out there and gets a lot of people riled up from seeing it. And there's also, of course, a lot of information overload now. I mean, nowadays you see so much more than you actually could in the past. So it feels like, for example, there's, again, going back to a big crime takes place, and now it feels like, well, there's so much crime, there's so much negativity in the world, there's so much going on that's going wrong, but in reality, it's just you're actually able to see more of it, whereas the person in the past could not. And that doubles into the media part of it, because a lot of the media, there's just now more of it, again, more access. So, for example, if you go on the internet now or any social media, it's easy to, and you got to be careful and understand this when you log on to these sources, it's easy to get caught up in thinking the world's kind of ending, but in reality, you're just seeing a lot of it, especially even if it's the same story, a lot of different outlets are reinforcing it by posting it and covering it, because a lot of media, traditional news media, is going to cover mostly hard news and what you're interested in, which turns out that's a lot of it, and people obviously are attached to tragedies, more violent stuff like that, and I do understand the importance of this, by the way, when you're reporting. I've been a journalist, I've in the past, now this is not journalism work for sure, this channel, really any others, but I've been to journalism school, I've done reporting, I understand what goes into it, and so there's a need for that at the same time, but also in this day and age of everything is accessible constantly, it definitely is, there's a negative factor to it, and so what gets attention, what's driving clicks, what's driving people to the channel is going to be what's continuously looked into, and that's kind of the reality of the situation. And you really want to be careful, because everything is group on group, I swear, with like every debate or every problem, everything is, it's one group against another, and I mean, it always happens on the internet specifically. Everybody's battling each other. You kind of see one clip on, again, on somebody's phone, and then you apply it to the entire world, and then you actually go out in person to these communities, and it never really feels like everybody hates each other, or it's just not to that same degree, or it's maybe one lunatic every here and there. But I remember myself anecdotally, just speaking of my real life experiences, when I lived in Miami for almost 3 years, I remember just, even though there were so many different groups of people from so many different countries, it was kind of like this melting pot of different cultures and people. So all that diversity, in fact, as a white person, you're in the minority, and most conversations you overhear are in Spanish, but it's like, I didn't feel like everybody hated each other or was out to get each other, or just this tension that you always hear online and stuff, and that people kind of really mix up on the internet to make it seem worse than it really is when you go out in reality. And so again, it didn't feel like these gangs running out against each other and everybody's bending together based on their race or group or whatever, this and that. So you really got to be careful with the group stuff, and everybody, again, you just kind of throw somebody's identity into a group and attack. That's kind of the formula for a lot of rage bait now, but it gets to a lot of people when you're looking at this stuff online. I would also say a lot of shows and podcasts make it worse, and I do have to support shows and podcasts because I run my own and stuff, and I do think they can be a really good and fun thing, but at the same time, when they're covering news stories daily and you're obviously trying to gather an audience, a lot of times you do have to be entertaining, you do have to be exaggeratory, and so they have no obligation, a lot of these people that are running a show, to be objective. Again, I understand that from that standpoint, but I'm not saying they have to be, but it comes with it, and so you do have to kind of take it with not a grain of salt, but to some degree, you have to understand that it's going to be an exaggerated point. Like, there's one, let's say, an event that happens, again, to the person that's on the show, that's going to feel like more evidence to a point, that's going to feel like more at the end of the world, and that you need to wake up and do something, but in reality, it's kind of just one of those one-off situations. But guys, I think you just need to really be careful, again, falling for stuff that is on the internet. I think a lot of it is just designed to make you angry. There's so many pages nowadays that are just strictly dedicated to really covering covering something and always trying to prove some type of point that applies to greater society about the way that person or that page or that channel is viewing the world, and overall it just ends up making things worse than it really is in real life when you actually get out there and actually get to talk and look at people and get to know what's going on. So let me know what you guys think about this one, or what are your thoughts on rage bait, and what are the best examples you've seen, or I guess you could say the worst in this situation. What gets people really riled up? But anyways, be careful in those comment sections, those forums, whatever is getting you riled up, and let me know what you think. Also, stay tuned for the next video that'll be out soon.